Attention, go!
The Hambleden Pairs Challenge Cup. The Jurkovics to the left of your picture on the Berkshire station. And we've got Wanamaker and Collins on the Buck station. And we're just watching the early steering. They're just trying to inject a bit of pace into their boats early, getting some energy and momentum into those boats. And it was a little bit of a meander on the right of your picture on the Buck station.
Well, do you know what? Collins and Wanamaker, like I say, they've been very used to rowing together. In fact, they've rowed with no one else since 2020 at the Olympic Games, but they've not rowed in this pair since back in 2022 when they won a bronze at the World Championships. And having jumped back in whilst Claire's at Cambridge, and you'll note they're rowing in Cambridge boat, Cambridge blades, they won't be used to that sort of energetic start, and it won't be as well practiced as the Croatians who've been racing on the international circuit. But they've seemed to have straightened out now, Tim, and they've got the better of the boat pace here in the first few hundred metres.
Yes, as you mentioned, Claire Collins in the boat race this year, back in April. Wanamaker with all that experience, Olympic Games in Paris in 2024. Both of them were in the women's 8 there that finished 5th last summer. Seems a long time ago now.
Oh, it's great looking back through both of their records. As I say, neither of them have raced without the other one since 2020. They've been in the pair together, the 4 together, and then the 8 together last summer, like you say, in Paris. And the Jurkovic is similar. They've been rowing together for some time now in this sibling combination. And it seems to be a thing in Croatia, Tim, rowing as siblings. We'll see the Sinkovic's and the Lončarić's and the Stewarts later on today at 2:30. But it must be much easier to get yourself coordinated, and they row very nicely together.
So the Croatian sisters there, the Jurkovics, who beat Cox and Patton of Australia in the semi-final yesterday, a length down today on the Berkshire station. Conditions-wise, Camilla, you've been out there relatively recently. It seems quite still where we are. It's around about 20 degrees, isn't it? And there's no rain. Actually, some rain was, the possibility of some rain was forecast, but hopefully that's going to miss us here in Henley. But in terms of conditions?
It is very still, especially in comparison to yesterday and Friday, where we had quite a wind pushing onto the backs of the crews. The one thing I would say is deceptively warm. You know, we're building into this sort of thunderstorm atmosphere, and so don't let it deceive you that these athletes will be working really hard, like rowing in a sauna almost, or a rainforest, where we're getting ready for that big storm of brewing. It'll be really hard to keep yourself with the oxygen on board, to take those nice deep breaths when it is so humid. But look at this. I think the Americans, Collins and Wanamaker, they've got that tiny bit more length. They look that little bit more relaxed up at the front, looking over the Jurkovics just to their right, and they're able to control the race from this point of view.
So good work from the Americans here, Madeleine Wanamaker and Claire Collins, who you can see moving very fluently at the midway point of this race, driving a lead from the Jurkovics. There they go, in that very distinctive Croatian colour.
And this is no mean feat here for the Americans, because the Jurkovics have been medalists at the European Championships this year. They picked up a bronze back in Plovdiv just a month or so ago, and they were really unfortunate actually to miss out on qualification for the Paris Olympics in this combination, where they were just one place off at the final Olympic qualification regatta in Lucerne last year. But this Olympiad, they seem to be attacking it with some gusto. But yeah, they really need to be back on pace here with Collins and Wanamaker, who again haven't really rowed together this year.
Yeah, we're going to need to see some of that gusto in that Croatian boat now, aren't we? A bit of vigour. And they are starting to make a move here. Working well, digging deep, trying to keep in contention. The Americans there have raced very nicely up until this point. Can the Croatians just unsettle them?
And I think unsettling in the pair is quite a useful tactic, because it's one of the most unbalanced and unstable boats. It's a bit like walking a tightrope with somebody else, but you've only got one half of the pole, Tim. You know, you can only control your part of the balance, your part of the boat, and so you're relying on that other person to sort of know and be in tune with you to keep that boat set. And you can see there that if the hands move up or down, the boat moves and wobbles from side to side. So if they're put under pressure here, the Americans, if the Jurkovics are making this surge and this charge that we think they are, that nice and lovely rhythm and set that we're seeing could get rattled.
Good smooth movement in the American boat that you can see now. Just watching the steering again, they seem to be drifting close together. The Jurkovic coming away from the Berkshire station. On the Buck station, the Americans sitting well. There you can see in the bow seat Ivana Jurkovic of Croatia. They know they need to make a move pretty quickly. Still lots of race to go, especially in these smaller boats where the lead can change hands very quickly. That gives you a very good indication of the challenge facing the Croatians. And in fact, the Americans have stretched the lead in the last couple of minutes. There's a lot of clear water there, which the Croatians need to try and turn around. Get a good view of the Croatian boat there, and we can zip round to the American boat then. Sweep in to watch Claire Collins in the stroke seat. There you can see Claire Collins with Madeleine Wanamaker in that lead boat, and they've dropped the pace off a little bit. The rate they've dropped off, they can crank it up quickly enough in these smaller boats, can't they? Oh, there's some really big steering issues in the Croatian boat. Now look at that, they've completely lost their bearings and gone from the Berkshire side of the water to the Buck side of the water, and in fact they've overlapped and gone too far. So there you can see major issues in the Croatian boat. It could be distracting for the Americans, but really that's the end of the Croatians' race, you'd have thought. They just strayed all the way across the track and onto the wrong side of the water. Now they're directly behind the Americans, so they're having to cope with the puddles and the dirty water. They'll be really rattled by that, their concentration. In fact, they're still directed in the wrong way, and yeah, that's really sad for the Croatians.
Yeah, I mean, they struggled with their steering earlier on in the week in their first round here in the Hambleden Pairs, but to be that far off the steering, there's so many things that can go wrong. Not only, I was talking about tightrope walking earlier and only having one side, it's a bit the same with the steering, right? With the pressure, you can only control your side, and so if that's off or not quite working, you can end up sort of being pulled round to one side, or that steering rudder can get little bits caught on it. It can get stuck to one side, or there can be bits of weed or bits of the river. Anything can happen. Unusual
to see that at this stage of the weekday, because we are talking about the world's best athletes here. It just shows you how difficult this is for all the boats, and even when you're as good as the Jurkovic sisters from Croatia, things can go wrong. And unfortunately for them today, it did go wrong, and well done to the Americans who kept their concentration, kept their focus. There's a bit of surprise as anybody to see where the Croatians pitched up in the last quarter of that race. But Madeleine Wanamaker and Claire Collins, they built their lead, and in truth, they'd probably won the race before that incident happened anyway. The Hambleden Pairs Challenge Cup, won by New York Athletic Club from USA. They'd done all the work, and they deserved their win, regardless of what went on in the last few hundred meters. So these are the Croatians sitting okay at this stage. You can just start to see early signs that they were moving across the water. They were firing in the wrong direction there, weren't they? And then they've gone completely the wrong side of their water. But as I say, in truth, the Americans had done the work by then, hadn't they? They had, and I think that's why we didn't see Matthew Pinson doing anything about warning them with the steering. They were so far behind that it wasn't impacting the Americans at all.
By 4.5 lengths.